The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I'm in my 8th year working alongside Bob to originate our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I am joined by our digital media specialist, Grant, the rare Friday morning recording. How we doing?
Doing great, Tan. I'm up here in super warm Minnesota. Looks like I'm at the beach right now, if you can see. But no, things are going great. But I think you might be doing a little bit better than me because you actually snuck a lineup into the Best Ball Mania finals right now.
Yes, I did. You can flash a graphic of the team on the screen here. I did 124 Best Ball Mania drafts this summer, and we are down to this squad. And I got pretty nice score from Lamar on Christmas Day, but I'd love a huge game from Sam Darnold because I think he's one of my most unique players. He wasn't really even being drafted until J.J. McCarthy's season-ending injury in training camp.
Okay, well, speaking of Sammy D, that actually does tie into our free bet of the week, and you are 17, 10, and 1 dating back to last year. So tell the people who you're going to go with in this massive NFC North battle.
We are going to release at 11 a.m. Eastern here on Friday, Minnesota Pick'em over Green Bay. And the podcast is going to come out a couple hours after that. So I think it'll probably be Vikings -1. And I would still take it there. I mean, the market is implying the Packers are 2 points better than the Vikings here after factoring in home field advantage. And I just can't get to a gap of that size. In fact, our metrics have Minnesota better than Green Bay. And I believe the Vikings should be favored here between -2.5 and -3. So Sam Darnold's 9.1 yard average depth of target ranks 4th. And I expect him to attack downfield in this game because Green Bay's defense is going to be without starting safety Evan Williams. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison have combined for 24 deep receptions, which is the most by any receiving tandem in the NFL.
All right, well, on the other side of the ball, Jordan Love was 0.26 EPA below his season average in his first game versus this Brian Flores Vikings defense. So how did they limit him?
Well, they play a ton of too high. Minnesota leads the NFL with a 70% too high safety rate. And Green Bay's offense, not as good against too high shells. They're averaging just 85% yards per pass play compared to when teams play single high against them. And that's 31st relatively in the NFL. And then the Packers also have not been as good against the blitz compared to a standard pass rush. And we know Minnesota leads the NFL with a 53% blitz rate. So I'm not really thinking the passing game is going to do very well. You mentioned how much worse Jordan Love was against the Vikings than he has been against every other team. And so I think that the Packers are going to want to feature the ground game in this game plan. They're one of 4 offenses with more runs than passes this season, but the Vikings are second in EPA per rush allowed. I think they can limit Josh Jacobs here, and I think the Vikings defense will stand up here against Jordan Love's offense.
Yeah, and to make things worse, Packers wide receiver Christian Watson, he's averaging 1.0 yards per route run, more than backup Dontavian Wicks, and he could miss Sunday's game. And Watson actually said this about his left knee after last week, and quote, "It was just kind of lingering a little bit, and I just couldn't play the type of football that I wanted to play, so I had to shut it down." So not great for him there. But speaking of an injury, let's move it over to our next segment here. We've got the injury watch. And Jalen Hurts remains in concussion protocol. And the Eagles actually signed Ian Book, which is indicating Hurts is likely out. And we're going to see another Kenny Pickett game.
Yeah, and we've got Pickett about 4 points worse than Hurts by our metrics. And I think Kellen Moore, Eagles offensive coordinator, is not going to be wanting his backup quarterback throwing the ball in rainy conditions with 30-mile-per-hour gusts and sustained winds of 15 miles per hour. So the Eagles are going to feature the ground game against the Cowboys defense, allowing a league-high 0.08 EPA per rush. I think it's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised to see a 65, 70% run rate from the Eagles this week. But the run game slowed down without the threat of Hurts, when they run those read options and having to account for an extra guy. Philadelphia's offense averaged 0.55 EPA per rush fewer when Hurts went out of the game last week against the Commanders.
Yeah, and the Cowboys pass rush should challenge Philadelphia's offensive line when they do drop back to pass. Dallas leads the NFL with a 9.1% sack rate, and edge rusher Micah Parsons has a league high 42 pressures since coming back into the lineup in week 10. So massive there. But looking at Arizona, their offense will be without both starting tackles, and Paris Johnson and Jonah Williams this week.
Yeah, and I think backups Kelvin Beachum and Jackson Barton are going to struggle across from edge rusher Jared Verse, whose 69 pressures through 16 games are the most by a rookie in the last 5 seasons.
Yeah, that's our D Roy, and we need those guys. But Cardinals running back James Conner suffered a right knee injury last week and initially seemed pretty unlikely that he would be playing this week. But Jonathan Gannon is not ruling him out yet.
And Connor is fifth in yards per route run among running backs, so he's pretty valuable in the screen game for them. He's worth zero point 0.3 points by our numbers, but I don't know. He's battling this injury. Instead of a gimpy Connor, I think Kyler, safety valve against that Rams pressure, will be tight end Trey McBride, who is second in yards per route run this season, and Los Angeles is surrendering a 58% success rate to opposing tight ends. That's 27th in the NFL.
Yeah, maybe we'll get Kyler to throw that touchdown pass to him he promised us last week. All right, well, let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got stock up, stock down, and whose stock are you buying this week?
I am buying the Eagles defense after they surrendered 36 points in last week's thriller versus the Commanders. Philadelphia is third in pressure rate this season. I think that pass rush is going to do some damage on Sunday because they've got good matchups for their best two pass rushers, starting with Josh Sweat off the edge. He's going to be lined up against Cowboys left tackles Tyler Guyton and Chuma Edogoba. And I think Chuma is probably going to get the start here, but even if it's Guyton, I mean, both those guys have combined to surrender 7 sacks this season. I think Josh Sweat gets at least another sack this week, maybe 2. And then Jalen Carter, the best player on the Eagles pass rush, fourth in pressures, is going to wreak havoc across from backup right guard Brock Hoffman, who has surrendered 60% of the pressures charged to the Dallas offensive line last week. He's clearly a weak point there, and you do not want your weak point going against Jalen Carter.
No, you do not. And Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy is definitely going to try and protect his backup quarterback by using the run game, but Philadelphia's defense conceded just 24 yards on 10 Brian Robinson carries last game, so they completely shut him down.
The Eagles are allowing a league low negative 0.22 EPA per rush. So I do not think the Cowboys ground game is going to bail them out in this weather. The only kind of course of action for rush against this run defense and pass rush would have been to feature the quick game to CeeDee Lamb. It's 13th in yards per route run, but Lamb had been battling that AC joint sprain for the past month or so, and the Cowboys are shutting him down for the season after being eliminated from the playoffs last week.
Yeah, that's probably a smart franchise move, but whose stock are you going to be selling this week?
I'm going to be selling the Jaguars offense. I think they're just going to struggle against Tennessee's defense, who leads the NFL in cover 4 rate. Jacksonville has only 89% yards per pass play against cover 4 compared to other coverages. And I just don't like Mac Jones against this Titans defense schematically.
Yeah, I mean, last time they played, he didn't throw a touchdown. He threw 2 interceptions, and they still somehow managed to cover that plus 3.5 for us.
Yeah, we had that as a best bet. So that was, I think the two of us might have been some of the only 2 people watching Jaguars Titans 3 weeks ago, but they did cover the plus 3.5 for us. But now Jacksonville's offense, since that game, has lost starting tight end Evan Ingram and starting left tackle Walker Little. Those 2 are worth 1.4 points combined by our metrics, and the wind will be twice as strong on Sunday as they were in Nashville in week 14. So it looks like it's going to be a wet, windy afternoon in Jacksonville. The conditions for scoring are about 3 points worse than they were 3 weeks ago by our numbers. So I'm selling Jacksonville's offense.
All right, well, speaking of wet and windy, let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got the weather of the week, and what are you seeing out there?
Well, this is shaping up to be the worst weather of the season on Sunday, with rain and wind across the country, causing scoring conditions 2.3 points worse than average, according to our numbers. The worst of it will be on the Atlantic coast in Philadelphia, like we talked about, and in Landover for the Sunday night game, which we'll break down in a few minutes. Now, there are 2 dome games on the DFS slate this Sunday, and those are the games I would be targeting in stacks because the weather everywhere else is just making it a little bit dicey.
All right, well, let's talk about those dome games and shift it over to our DraftKings player of the slate. So who are you putting in that lineup this week?
I'm putting in Brock Bowers at 6,700. He is 10 yards away from setting the 63-year-old record for receiving yards by a rookie tight end.
Yeah, shout out to Mike Ditka for that one.
Yeah. So he's held the record for 6 decades, but here comes Brock Bowers to break it. And he has the most yards after the catch among all tight ends in the NFL. And on the flip side, the Saints have surrendered the second most yards after catch to opponents. So I think we're going to see Brock Bowers in the open field getting that yak on Sunday. The Saints are the NFL's worst defense in yards per catch allowed over expected by the NFL Next Gen Stats model, which basically takes into account where you caught the ball and where the defenders were when you caught the ball. So it's just going to be Brock Bowers running in open space all afternoon. New Orleans is 26th in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends.
Yeah, I could see Brock going absolutely wild this week, but let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got our primetime preview where the league flexed in Washington versus Atlanta. So we've got 2 rookie quarterbacks battling to make the playoffs here. And Michael Penix averaged 7.3 yards per pass play in his first start. And last week, you pointed out how the Giants defense was prime for Atlanta's offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, to attack.
Right, because the Falcons are averaging 22% more yards per pass play versus cover 1 than other coverages. And the Giants had the 5th highest cover 1 rate in the league. Now, he gets to go against Washington's defense, as that's the 2nd highest cover 1 rate in the league. And the Commanders might be without cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, who's conceding 0.92 yards per cover snap fewer than backup cornerback Benjamin St-Juste. So I would say another good schematic matchup for the rookie quarterback in Atlanta, but I don't love it for Bijan or Drake London. Bijan is going to have to go against Washington's defense that's 3rd in receiving success rate allowed to opposing running backs. And Drake London, who's done a lot of damage out of the slot this year, when he goes into the slot, is going to be across from Noah Igbenogany, who is 3rd in yards per cover snap allowed, or 4th in yards per cover snap allowed among nickelbacks. So it's going to be, I think Penix should be targeting who's ever not in the slot, whether that be London or Darnell Mooney, who has 13 receptions with 20-plus air yards. That's 3rd in the league. I think he's going to be attacking downfield against the cover 1 coverage with Mooney, with Drake London.
Well, looking at the other rookie, it seems like you've got it written up here that his top 2 receiving options might be contained this week.
Right. I mean, Zach Ertz, 4th in success rate. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury loves Zach Ertz, and he's had a solid season for the Commanders, but the Falcons are 3rd in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends. And then Atlanta cornerback A.J. Terrell, 6th in yards per cover snap allowed, should be able to battle with Terry McLaurin and take away those deep balls that we've seen the Commanders have so much success with. The scoring conditions for this game are 6 points worse than average, with high winds and rain in the forecast. So we think that the spread of -4 is about right this week. And I think that the market has taken into account properly the scoring conditions here. The market's at 47.5, and our model says 46.2. So maybe it's got a little bit more room to go down here. But I'm not seeing anything of value for side or total.
All right, well, with nothing to play on that side, we got to shift it over to our primetime prop, and you are 22-14, dating back to last year, but what are you going to go with?
I'm going with Zach Ertz under 30.5 receiving yards. So the strength of this Falcons defense is the 2 all-pro safeties, Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates. Atlanta is 3rd in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends, and the 20-mile-per-hour winds and rain will make passing very difficult on Sunday night. Look no further than that Thursday night dud between the Rams and 49ers we saw 2 weeks ago to get a sense for the kind of game this could be. I mean, the Commanders can move the ball on the ground in the run game and with scrambling from Jaden Daniels, but I don't think they're going to be able to throw very well. So I'm going to be taking under Zach Ertz receiving yards on Sunday night.
Well, I like that pick. And if you're looking for more content, make sure to head over to drbobsports.com, where you'll also find Bob's college bowl game write-ups as well as the college basketball service. So we will be back next Friday to preview week 18 of the NFL.